I was completely disconnected from my two biological daughters and my foster daughter, Tess, for a long time. We lived in the same household, but there was a deep and profound disconnect happening. My kids didn't feel like they could communicate with me. They didn't feel safe telling me things. Sometimes in the process of understanding communication and behavior that results from breakdown in communication and connection, I have come to understand and believe that when people lie to us, sometimes it's simply because they don't feel safe telling us the truth, right? So there's another reason for us to try to have a connection with our kids heart to heart, and with our spouses and everyone else in the world that we care about. And this has been a long process for me, these last 10 years of understanding how powerful our words are and how powerful our communication is in terms of how our loved ones feel when we're interacting with them, how our children feel. And it breaks my heart because I know so many parents who don't have connection with their children, and they grieve that. There's a wonderful book called Hold On to Your Kids, written by Gabor Mate. Oh my God, it's amazing. It really touched my heart. I think I read it back in 2014, and I knew right then and there that there was so much I could have done raising my kids that would have helped them feel connected to me, which I never knew. And he talks about in that book how our kids need connection, and because we, who teaches us how to connect, right? Like, I wasn't raised learning how to connect, and it wasn't role modeled to me. There was no emotional connection in my household. Emotions were discouraged. So when I was in a lot of pain as a young adult and having children and going through a divorce and having a spouse that was addicted to drugs and sex and all sorts of things, and then him leaving for another woman. I mean, like, I was an emotionally challenged woman, and I certainly didn't have the space to hold the space for my kids to have emotions either. So it was either be the super parent and try to get them to be quiet by pleasing them and giving them everything that I thought they wanted so that they would feel less traumatized by everything that was going on in their life. But at the same time, playing super parent really never addresses that unmet need. And that's where Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes into this picture, is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs has those 5 levels of needs in the pyramid. And I'm not going to get this right exactly, but there's the physiological need for safety. There's the emotional need for safety. There's the need for a sense of love and belonging. Maybe I'm going to get this. There's a need for self-esteem, and then there's the need for self-actualization, right? And if we don't have those 4 levels of needs met, we're not going to feel capable. We're going to feel anxiety. We're not going to feel the ability to connect with each other. Because we're operating from the amygdala, guys. It's the fight flight mechanism of the brain. It's fight, freeze, fight, I don't know, run, freeze, fight, something like that, right? Flight or freeze, something. But the thing is that now, when my kids were in their late teens and we didn't have emotional connection, I wasn't available for that because I was under, oh God, so much stress, right? So much of it was due to my own hierarchy of needs not being met. Now, I didn't know anything about Maslow's hierarchy of needs at this time, so I'm reflecting back now with the understanding that I want to share with you guys today. I didn't have any of those needs met, so I was operating from the amygdala. I was always trying to avoid pain, seeking pleasure, but not using the prefrontal cortex, which is the adult brain. It's the executive decision maker. It's the creative thinking area of our brain. I was operating in reaction to everything in my life. And there was a lot to react to. I mean, I had left home when I was 14, lost my brother to IV drugs and alcohol. I'd been doing drugs and alcohol since I was 12. I was just, constantly choosing unhealthy relationships because if I was in a relationship with a partner who was using worse than I was, then I could get mad at them and not look at my own stuff, and just on and on. So what happened is that when my daughter Alexis was facing 6 years in prison at age 19, and for 3 years before that, there was just so much disconnect. She was always gone. She was disappearing. She wasn't coming home at night. And she certainly wasn't talking to me about what was going on for her because she didn't feel safe emotionally talking with me. And so much of that was because I wasn't a safe person to talk to. Again, I was operating from the fight, flight, freeze mechanism of the brain, and I didn't have the ability to be compassionate and calm and centered and safe for her to feel safe with. So her levels of those first 4 levels of Maslow's hierarchy, again, physiological safety, roof over the head, food on the table, clothes on your back, emotional safety, knowing that the world was not against me or her, but for us, not against us, the universe, I guess. Having a sense of love and belonging. I mean, I didn't feel like I belonged to myself. I didn't even know who I was. Whew. So anyway, my girls, I mean, how could they know who they were? They didn't have a role model that allowed them to know a strong woman who had a sense of all of those needs being met, right? So that I could actually become self-actualized and be that healthy adult for them. They didn't have that. So when, again, going back to when my daughter was 19 and was facing 6 years in prison, she was offered a plea deal. So she was able to go to treatment for a year and do 3 years of probation rather than going to prison for 6 years. And thank God she went for that and was able to stay in treatment for 12 months and not be testing dirty. And then another 2 years. I mean, the angels, I don't know where they came from, but they showed up for her. And they showed up for me too, although it wasn't easy. She even though we didn't have a healthy connection, we had a very enmeshed codependent relationship. And that was pointed out to her when she was first in treatment, and I'm on the treatment property telling the owner of the treatment facility that my daughter was on the wrong medication because she seemed more messed up mentally than she was when she was high on heroin. And I don't know who I thought I was, but I was told I wasn't welcome back on the grounds. And her therapist said that she needed to take a break from interacting with me because we had a very unhealthy relationship, which on my end, when my daughter communicated that to me, I felt so angry and outraged and self-righteous and hurt, and certainly didn't want her to withdraw from our quote unquote relationship because she was filling a huge void for me in my life, right? Like I needed to feel a sense of love and belonging, and I was fulfilling that need in a very unhealthy way by being enmeshed with her. And with other people in my life too, my other 2 daughters. It was all just this one big enmeshed, unhealthy family system that if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you understand that the adults in the house, if they don't have those needs met themselves, our children are not going to have those needs met either. And so often, like I'm going to just say it, guys, 100% of the families I have talked with over the years are thinking that their kids are the ones that have the problems. But to be honest with you, I had the problems, and my kids were gifted the problems from me. If I didn't have my first floor levels of Maslow's needs met, how were they going to? And when we don't have those needs met, we want to numb, and we don't feel safe connecting, right? We don't feel safe. What's that? There's a whole theory. There's books written about this. The way we attachment disorder. My kids had attachment disorders. I had attachment disorders. We either are people pleasers, or we keep people away. We are not safe to connect with emotionally for whatever reasons, and that's a whole nother story. But getting back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, here we are 10 years later, my daughters and I, and the journey of my daughter's, Alexis's recovery was what led me to begin to wake up myself. And I learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I didn't even learn about that until a couple of years ago. So basically what I'm trying to say is that even when my daughter was in recovery, she did not want to be connected with me until I was able to actually be a safe person for her to connect with. So if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and we want to have a connection with our child or with anybody, we need to be participating in helping them get those needs met, because that's how we end up feeling safe to them. So if we're detaching, because we think that they're the ones with the problems, if we're pushing them away because they don't feel safe, I understand all of that. But if you want connection, then even though this might sound counterintuitive, the first thing you have to do is become somebody that they feel safe with. And now the question is, how do you do that? How do you become somebody that they feel safe with? And the very first thing that it took for me and my daughter Alexis to reconnect, and for my other daughter Gabby, unfortunately my foster daughter and I, although I think she knows she's safe connecting with me, she's chosen to stay detached, and that's a whole nother story, so we won't go there right now. But she knows I love her, and I'm there for her anytime she feels the need, and she has created a whole nother family for herself in another state, and that's fine. That's her choice. I love her immensely. But my two daughters here in locally to where I live, they didn't feel safe connecting with me until I became somebody who was able to communicate with them in a way that was unconditionally loving, compassionate, and was non-judgmental, was respectful, and took out a lot of terminology that if you have a moment or some time, I highly recommend a book called Nonviolent Communication. Everybody I talk to that has problems with family members, especially kids, use words that I have to bring to their attention that are considered violent communication. Now, nonviolent communication is a strategy of communication that creates connection, and the book is written by Marshall Rosenberg. Got to get it, you guys. He also wrote another book called Speaking Peace. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. If you read those books, I highly recommend them. I also highly recommend the book Hold On to Your Kids. You will learn some amazing communication techniques and words to use that allow people to feel safe with us. And that helps us meet those primary needs that our loved ones have, which is a sense of feeling love and belonging, right? And self-esteem. When we can, our words are like wands. They either give life or they break life down, meaning they cause people to feel unworthy, unlovable, flawed. And that is, again, that contributes to those hierarchy of needs not being met. So we can learn to use language in a way that speaks our truth, but we learn to use language that speaks it with respect and kindness and love. And that's what this message is about today is, look, first of all, we need to speak to ourselves with respect and kindness and love. And I don't know about you, but I have a critical parent voice in my head that sometimes gets really loud. And I have to check in with myself. I have to journal. I write affirmations. I have a vision board to remind myself of my dreams, of the way I want to feel in my day-to-day life. And that's another whole nother talk. But I just wanted to share with you guys today that, look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, learn how to use language that creates connection, understand that our loved ones will not feel safe connecting with us on a heart-to-heart level ever until we start learning how to communicate in a way that feels safe to them. And there was one other thing I wanted to say. This is huge. One way that we can help our kids feel safe is to acknowledge that we have growing to do ourselves, and that the current status of our relationship is not about their behavior. It's not about their choices. It's a combination of family generational trauma, and those Maslow's hierarchy of needs not being met as we parented and as we grew up. And it just gets handed down from one generation to another. And so often our kids feel like they're the black sheep in the family. And there really is nothing like that. There is no such thing. There is a symptom of people not getting their needs met. And those unmet needs drive people to make choices in their lives that are numbing, people-pleasing, or offloading shame and trauma in unhealthy, unpleasant ways.